Made. More skillful talk, better outcomes. Culturally, trust, everything gets built through good talk. Good talk. Same in a relationship. If we're talking, we're okay. We can at least figure something out. We're not talking, we're thinking in our heads. We got the potential to go all over the place. So what are the fundamentals then of having a skillful critical conversation? What are some of the fundamentals? That's what we're going to do now. Now we're just going to do a bit of a role play. We get a chance just to play some out and use 5 other colleagues to help us to do that in small groups of 6 or so. The whole first case has been to say that, and Bill O'Brien said this at the end of his career when he was asked, he was a very successful CEO of a company in America, and they said to him, after all your leadership life, what do you reckon you've learned in one lesson? And he says, you know what, he says, and it'll surprise you to hear it. He said, what I've learned is that the success of any action, of any change project, of any intervention, of any coaching session, depends largely on the interior condition of the leader, of the intervener. If the interior condition, the inside of you isn't okay, the inside of the critical conversation won't be okay. So that you're up for it, you're ready for it, and you're in a good space for it. I don't know if this is nature or nurture here. I'm not a person in life generally who takes too much personally. It doesn't seem to be the way I'm made. I might be less empathetic than I should be or something, but I'm not a person who stresses a lot about, if I feel I've done a reasonably honest thing, and other people think I'm an idiot, I can live with that. It doesn't really stress me too much. I might have learned it in principalship, because in principalship you get called an idiot a lot. It's actually almost why you're there. In leadership, generally speaking, people are going to have a crack at you, they're going to vent, they're going to say stuff about you, they're going to infer your intentions, they're going to say, what a goose. On a good week as a principal, you might go to the pub with the staff for a beer, but then you have to leave so they can get on with saying how stupid you are. And of course, parents are hard on teachers generally, to be honest, nowadays, and on leaders in schools as well, because every child's a genius nowadays. Everything they've ever drawn has gone up on the wall or been laminated and put on the fridge. Another trap to avoid. I've been insulted by some of the best of them. And nothing is personal, guys, unless you give it permission to be personal. A person can say what they want about you. It's only personal when you allow that in. And that might sound like an easy thing to say, but that's just the way I basically, I don't know if I've learned to be always like that, I'm not sure. You have to give an insult permission to be an insult before it can really affect you. Other people can be up that ladder. It's a ladder. It's a thing someone thinks about you. And there might be learning in there for you, that's interesting. There might be nothing in it for you, that's interesting, that's fine. When you work in a job that has calling in it, has heart in it, it's easy to get over-identified with the job. Teaching is like that, I think coaching is like that. You get very close to the work. You care about these people, you care about what they're trying to achieve, you care about the best for them and so on. And when you care a lot about your work, it's hard to have enough separation to talk about your performance without feeling you're talking about yourself. And that's what the word identify means. It's Latin for to make something feel the same as you. Idem facere, to make something feel like it's you. So if you're over-identified with your coaching and someone wants to tell you you coached poorly, or they've done an observation on you and they want to tell you that didn't go so well, you don't hear them talking about your work, you hear them talking about you. Because you're too close to it and there's not enough room for them to give you that feedback. So in work where people care a lot about their work, feedback is tricky. Because everybody runs the risk of it feeling like it's personal. When you really care about your work, feedback is tricky, because it sounds personal even when it's not. And it's an occupational hazard, I guess, for all of you. I remember being attacked, just to give you an example, by a woman. A year 3 teacher, so that would be in Australian terms, about an 8-year-old. The child had brought work up to the teacher after lunch. The teacher was obviously not in a great place. Her presence wasn't where it should have been. And she looked at the work and said, oh, the Jeremy, that's crap. Take that away. Don't bother coming up to me again unless you've got something worth showing me. That's just crap. Like, it's just, that's a big thing to do nowadays. To tell a child the work is crap. In my days, it wasn't a big thing to do. Right? We would have, yeah, it's the story of some of our lives. But of course, when that went home, it wasn't just that the child had been insulted. The family was insulted. Intergenerational conflict. All our forebears have been insulted. Don't they know how smart we are? And the mother, in response, wanted 3 things from the school. She wanted a personal apology from the teacher, and that was appropriate, because it wasn't the correct language, and the teacher needed to apologize. And she had. But that wasn't enough. She needed a note in the newsletter. Now, the note didn't have to say the teacher's name, it just had to say that if any child was verbally abused in the school, that there was a policy that would be enacted, and the teacher would be dealt with appropriately. Right? So you can imagine where that was going in the coffee shops. And the third thing the mother wanted, because we are the KGB, was a note on that teacher's file, the teacher was 26, to say that she had been found prone to verbal abuse of children, and that any school that ever employed her from then on would need to know that in case it had recurred, and it became a pattern of behaviour, not just an event, right? And of course I couldn't do those last 2 things. They weren't appropriate. The apology was appropriate. And of course then what happens? She turns on me. And she says, "Oh, yeah, that's just typical of you, Brendon. You are fucking useless. You are the most useless principal in Perth. You're fucking hopeless." I don't take things personally. So what's going on in my head? You've got no idea how useless I actually am. I'm far worse than that. That's not even the worst thing I've done today. Because when you don't take things personally, the room doesn't close up on you so much. There's still room for you to think, well, that's her anger. It doesn't have to be mine. That's her offer. It doesn't have to be accepted. And I felt like I'm comfortable with what I'm saying right now. And I'm not letting the room... You know, when someone ambushes you, we'll talk about this as we go along here now, it feels like all of a sudden you're working with them in a phone box. I was in the room, now it's a phone box. And sometimes you can feel like there's people banging on the waiting to get in to make a phone call as well. Like, it all feels really small and pressured when you're ambushed. It doesn't happen, especially if you manage to maintain your space. And don't let people make things personal when they're not personal. You know, and don't let yourself make it personal. There's always a campfire. This is the second fundamental. The first fundamental is find your space and protect your own space. You have the right to space in a conversation. The second fundamental in a critical conversation is to remember that there's not just 2 in the room ever. There's always a third in the room. There's always a campfire. Just think of it as a physical space. Let me borrow a chair. If you get into that, think of that mother and myself in that critical conversation. That's where that room could have felt. Win-lose. Me and my athlete who I'm not getting on with in a really difficult space. Me and my upline in a really difficult space. Right? If you allow yourself to set up that dynamic in a conversation, you're in a win-lose dynamic. Somebody's going to go away feeling like they've lost. And that's a problem normally. We want these conversations to resolve things. So we want a campfire. We want the room. There's still really only 2 people there, but there's always a shared concern. Like, that mother and I had to find the campfire was her daughter, or her son. It was her daughter, actually. I said a boy's name, but it was Jessica was the girl's name. I can tell you because I'm a long way away. The actual campfire was Jessica. And until she could accept and I could accept that we were both here for something else, we were just going to fight that out. I was probably going to get powery, say, well, look, I'm sorry, if you're not interested in being in this school, you can go to another school. I'll give you the number of the school down the road. So I could get power. Or she could have said, I'm ringing the department, you're hopeless, I'm going to ring the department, power. So the power play. And the question that helped me resolve that issue was, actually, do you remember the worst thing you've ever said to Jessica? And she said, I'm not going to tell you what it was. And I said, no, but I said, if I made up my mind who you were as a mum, by hearing that, how would that be? She said, that would be really unfair. I said, I think that's what you're doing to the teacher. And I said, we can't accept that even that teacher and that clumsy mum cares about your daughter. If we can't accept that, you're in the wrong school. You're in the wrong school. If you think we're here not for her. Now, we disagree what's right for her right now. We're going to fight that out because we care about her. But we're fighting because we care about her. Not because we're just people trying to win a war with each other. So the campfire changed the dynamic of the room. Sometimes you're not getting on with a colleague. I'm going to talk to my colleague who I'm not getting on with. The campfire is, we can do better, a restored relationship between us. We could be at the Christmas party having a beer together and saying, we've had our ups and downs this year, but we finished well, eh? So the campfire is that restored, that relationship restored. So don't let the room feel like it's me versus you. Just get a sense and remind the other person of what we're here to do. How will this make us stronger? Even if it's a tricky moment for us, how does it make us stronger? There's always a campfire. Then you need to keep your eye on that sometimes. Because if you forget that, you can end up in that other dynamic. The campfire normally is involved in this. I don't want to worry too much about the quote. Our reason, mutual purpose, and mutual respect. You've got to have both. Mutual purpose gets us into the room. Mutual respect keeps us in the room. We're trying to protect the campfire through mutual purpose. We have a shared space and mutual respect. So that's the campfire sort of space. Okay. The last thing I want to say, and we're going to get you to read a transcript of a difficult conversation, trying to make some sense of this model with me, is that there are really a couple of energies. We started talking this afternoon about energy. In a critical conversation, you're going to be either in advocacy, look at my body at the moment, advocacy, coming forward, telling, saying what you think. You see where my energy is coming forward? Or inquiry. How is it for you? What are you thinking? Why don't you, question? So there's the sort of energies. Forward, front foot in cricket terms, or back, asking, inquiring. And most of us have a preferred energy. Some of you in the room might say, I'm actually pretty comfortable forward. This is what I think. But more typically, people are more comfortable sort of asking questions, see how the other person feels. Neither stance is better than the other. The issue here is the timing. If you're going forward in a conversation when you should be asking, you'll probably do damage. But also, if you're asking, when you need to be showing what you think, and showing your data, giving your cards, you'll probably be doing damage too. So it's kind of a movement between telling and asking, between advocating for something and inquiring is the sort of movement we want to get. We want to get those steps in the right order. Okay, so that's the basic energies we're trying to actually use in a critical conversation. If I ask you to show your hands, which of you feel more comfortable forward? Typically in New Zealand, Australia, typically about a fifth of people feel more comfortable going forward, and most people feel comfortable actually in the not showing too much about themselves, asking, watching, listening sort of space. When they study leadership in New Zealand and Australia across all fields, they say the leadership behaviour that troubles us most in the two countries, I know we're very different countries in different ways, but is avoidance. We have a tendency in leadership in Australia and New Zealand to flow around problems rather than to deal with them. We kind of do anything almost rather than to say, hey, look, I'm sorry, that's not something, I'm going to talk to you about that because that's not okay with me. That's a hard space for us to take. Now, it may not be true for all of you here. Some of you may be very skillful in that space. But avoidance, and that's with hundreds of thousands of studies, human synergistics, and we'll look them up, hundreds of thousands of studies are saying that as leaders in our countries, we tend to stay back at times when we should come forward. And as such, we walk past conversations that we should have when there's snowballs, when they can be picked up easily and dealt with, and if you don't deal with the snowball and it keeps rolling, you'll end up dealing with the cultural damage that goes on those conversations not had will do. So, if you have to deliver a message, you have to tell off the team, here's why you're off the team, or I'm not comfortable with the way you're following through on training expectations, or you're talking to your captain, and you're trying to tell your captain that hey, the standards that you're leading in the team aren't up to the mark. You're talking to a colleague, and you're trying to say, hey, that's not okay. The way you spoke to me at the meeting isn't okay. You're talking to a parent. Who rabbiting on from the sidelines and needs to be told, you know what? No, you've gone too far there. You can't say that at the sidelines. That's not acceptable. It's not fair. It's not fair in sport. So those are message delivery. You can see that your basic stance, there'll be a bit of listening of course, but the basic stance is coming forward and saying, sorry, that needs to stop. Something must change. It's an advocacy conversation, yeah? Because the standard you walk past is the standard, except everybody sees, I don't know where the slide's gone there, but if as a leader you walk past things that need to be talked about, everybody sees that. And they, you think of the levels of perspective, they see events not happening, conversations not being had, they'll make a judgment that your actual value is, I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Oh, it'll go away on its own. Or I'll make a big general talk to the whole team, rather than deal with the individual. They see that, and it affects the way they see your leadership, because you're walking past important things. So, here's a scenario. I'm giving you a scenario. It's in your sheets, but don't look at it for a second. Here's the backstory to this scenario. I'm working with an IT company, right? 80 people, in a big room that's this sort of shape, so it's elongated that way. I'm at the middle here, and there's a guy. It's the first time I've worked with them, and there are groups of 8, so 10 or 11 groups. And there's a guy sitting here who just keeps his back to me as much as he can. I'm doing my best out here, working away. This guy, he's a big unit again, he's sort of sitting there. If I come anywhere near him, he sort of just gives me just a little enough of a subtle sort of shift so that that I can't engage with him at all. And at any group conversations that I'm asking him to do, he doesn't give his mates anything either. He's just doesn't want to be there. That's what I'm thinking. That's the ladder I'm going up. Okay? I don't want to go up that ladder. I'm doing this session. I'm thinking he could be sick. Another ladder. He might be a very shy man. He could have also, it could be an anxious person in large groups of people. Who knows? So just leave him alone, Brendon. Don't make any judgments about it. Okay. So morning tea comes. Fine. Second session. He gets worse. Definitely giving me the signal. And this session he goes out of the room about 4 times and has a quiet cigarette out on the veranda. Out for a quiet derby. We can see the smoke. Like in the room. We're in the room working and we can see the smoke from this bloke having a cigarette 4 times in a session between morning tea and lunch. And then the Irish starts to rise, right? So you start to think, hold on a second, this is ridiculous. Like, what concept of professional engagement does this man not get? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm starting to have an inner dialogue. Now, you would never in a session name that in front of everybody, because that would be an abuse of your power. So you'd never say that in front of his colleagues. You could do damage there. I would never do that. But I am angry. And it is drawing my attention away from the work. And I am starting to tell myself some stories about him. At lunchtime, the director of the company is in the room, by the way. And I coach the director in executive coaching space. I coach the director of the company. So at lunchtime, I've had enough. I've gone over to the director and I've said, mate, what is the story with this Stuart guy? The director was halfway through a chicken sandwich. And he said, yeah, I'm really sorry, Brendon. It's really embarrassing, isn't it? I went on with his sandwich. So I'm thinking, all right. He goes for a statistic. I said, mate, is he always like this? Out comes the statistic. Normally worse. Normally worse. You got him on a good day, mate. Back into the statistic. I'm waiting for more, and he says, nothing more. And I said to him, what do you normally do about this? Oh, he says, no. He says, we're non-confrontation. We're non-confrontation. He said, we were the Beatles 5 minutes ago, 4 blokes set up this company. Now it's a big company and blah, blah, blah. He says, so we don't have to deal with that stuff. So I said, so nothing happens? He said, no. I said, no, that's not good enough, mate. Something has to be said here. And I said, I can't say it because I'm an outsider. I don't know the context. I don't want to do him any damage. He said, no. I've gone back up to the front desk. He's come up to me, the director, and said, actually,